Hey, you sewing besties. Welcome to the Crazy Hat Lady tutorial. Today I am going to walk you through the Crazy Hat Lady pattern, which I just released in my Etsy shop. So if you don't already have your pattern, or if you're not a member of the B-Man by Bridget and Opal Annie pattern club, where you get all of our patterns for free, head on over to my Etsy shop and grab your pattern. It's in the pattern section, and again, it's called the Crazy Hat Lady. Grab your pattern, get it printed out. It's only 6 sheets, so it's real easy to assemble. So grab your pattern, and let's talk about some of the features and options of this hat. First of all, the hat comes in 3 sizes: small, medium, and large. And when we talk about sizes, we're talking about the circumference of your band. Size small is 21 inches. Now that's finished. So that's how big around it is when you're finished. 21 inches on the size small, 22.5 inches on the medium, and 24 inches on the large. Okay, so we've got 3 sizes. And I think I just let the cat out of the bag when I did that, because now you'll see that they are also fully reversible. On one side, you're going to have a shabby, raw-edged, kind of funky feel. On the other side, you're going to have a fully, little bit more, I don't know what's the word, but finished looking hat. So, but you can get 2 hats in one. You know, how cool is that? Pick 2 different coordinating fabrics, or however you want to do it, and yeah, one effort and you get 2 hats. Another feature of this hat is I am going to show you how to put a wire in this brim. And you can see here, all of these have wires in the brim. Okay, what that's going to do is it just gives some stability to your hat. So when you've got it, and of course I made bends in it, but you can straighten a flat brim out. Where's the back? Oh, there it is. So when you have it on, if you want to fold your front up and kind of pull it around like so, I mean, you can position your brim any way that you want to wear it. You see, you can kind of give it some little crinkles. I mean, however you want to do it, however you want to wear it, that gives you more options for wearing your hat. So we will talk about the wire. I will show you, there's also 2, now it's not in the pattern. The pattern is going to show you how to do it this way, where we're going to put a bias tape over the wire. In the tutorial today, I'm going to show you an alternate way. If you're wanting a complete raw edge, like this hat's a little bit shabby on both sides. We've got finished seams here, but I wanted a little more decorative, kind of rusticy edge. So you can see I've got a raw, y'all don't look at my hands, I was dying earlier. Look at my nails now, they look terrible. Anyway, working hands. You can see you have a raw edge here. And so I'm going to show you how to do this also. That's that feature. The other feature is, and this is probably most useful on the floppy hat brim, and that is a snap. So you can see here, I put a little snap on the band and then a snap down here. And because we have a wider, floppier brim, your wire is still going to hold it. You can see how I just shaped that wire up there. But if you're out fishing or out gardening and you want to just secure this brim up, you just snap it in place, and there you have it. It's not going to fall down in your face. And again, you can still then, you know, do your edges how you want. So that is all of the options. Oh, I bumped you guys. I'm sorry. Come back in focus. Come back. Okay. So we talked about size. Let's talk about the band height options. We have 4 height options. And what I'm talking about on the height and the bands, this is your band that goes around your head. And we have 4 height options. This is an average height. In the pattern, it's going to give you short, average, tall, and top hat. Okay, this one's average. This, I think the rest of these are as well. Yes. This one, however, is tall. And I don't know if you can see here. Let's see if we can compare like this. If you see here, we have two strips. You know what? This is going to be easier to show from this side because you can see the raw edges. Let me do that. Duh. All right, here we go. So you can see on this one, I have kind of a fat band and I have 2 of them. You can see on this one, I have kind of a skinnier band and I have 3 of them. Okay. On your pattern, you have 2 bands. You have band 1 and you have band 2. Band, oh, you can't even see me. Look, I looked up and I'm like, where's band 2? Band 2. So band 1 and band 2. Band 1 is going to say cut 2 or 3. And for the short height, which I don't have a sample of here, I do apologize. For the short height, you're going to use 2 band Bs. Okay. For the average, or is that what I called it? Yeah, the average height, you're going to use musical hats. You're going to use 2 band 2s, B2, which is this. It's a little bit wider band, and we're going to use 2 of them. For the tall hat, which is this, you're going to use 3 of band 1. So we've got the narrower band, but we've got 3 of them. Okay. One of the hats that I'm going to sew today is the top hat. And again, I don't have a sample out here because I'm going to sew it today. And for the top hat, you're going to use 3 B2s. All of this is written here clearly on your pattern. These little stars tell you how many pieces to cut for which height. So this is short and tall, and this is for average and top hat. Okay. So that pretty much covers the band heights. And again, I mean, you literally could play with that however you wanted. You could take a wide band and a narrow band. These are all going to interchange with each other. They are all the same sizes basically around. So they're, any piece that you have here, you're going to be able to mix and match. I mean, heck, you could do 5 of these band 1s and get like a big cat in a hat hat. So feel free to play with those bands and band widths any way you want to. I've just given some guidelines here to show you, kind of get you started. But your possibilities are really endless with this pattern. The next thing we will talk about is the brim. So we have 3 brim widths, and this one is the floppy brim. So we've got a wide brim here. This one is the wide brim. Okay, so if I match these up width-wise, you can see the difference here. Wide, and then the floppy, and then this one is the narrow brim. And if I lay it on top there we go. You see we've got the narrow brim, the wide brim, and the floppy brim. Any of these brims you can put with any of the band heights in any of the 3 sizes to get whatever you want. Again, did I say this had options? Because we've got a lot of options. All right, enough about that. So the next thing that we are going to talk about is gathering our supplies. So obviously you need your pattern. Sorry, I had a brain fart. You need your pattern. Move that out of the way. And let's talk about fabrics next. For your fabrics, in the pattern I have mentioned that you can use a cutter quilt. I get some cutter quilt pieces off of Etsy. One of the hats I'm going to sew today, I'm going to be using a cutter quilt, so I'll show you that piece here in a minute. Well, actually, I'll go ahead and show it to you now. This is the cutter quilt piece that I'm going to be using. When you're using a cutter quilt piece, you only need to cut each of the pattern pieces one time because the backside's already done for you. If you're going to be using quilting cotton, which is what I did on this hat, I've got this quilting cotton on one side, and then you're going to need quilt binding, and then you're going to need a coordinating fabric for your backside. And there are, I'm not an avid quilter, guys, but I did give you some basic quilting instructions in here as to how to quilt your pieces, because basically you're going to quilt your pieces and then sew them together, okay? So you'll just like make quilt sandwiches with your base fabric, your batting, and then your top fabric, and you're going to quilt it, and then you're going to cut out your pattern piece from that, okay? And like I said, there's some rough instructions for that in here, but that's if you want to use quilting cotton. But like I said, if you're using something that's pre-quilted, you don't have to worry about that. You just take your pre-quilted piece, cut out your pattern pieces. So you could use that. Some of the other options that I've pulled is this one, which I'm super excited to make. This is just kind of a thin cotton, and then I've got some velvet that's also kind of thin. So when I do this one, I'm going to put some batting between them. Okay, so I'm anxious to see how this is going to look, and hopefully at the end of this video you'll see this one made up also. With the velvet, I've always wanted a velvet hat. I think they're awesome. So we'll see. This is what I'm going to do for that. This on one side, the velvet on the other. One other thing I pulled out was this. You can use anything upcycled. This is a piece of drapery that I got at a vintage resale shop. You can see it's still got the pleats in it for the top of the drapes. But I love the print on here. So, and this one you could either, I've got a section of it that's got the fabric on both sides. If I were to use this is a real heavy fabric. I would not take this apart and add quilt lining in it. I mean, not lining, what's the word? We just said it a minute ago. Batting. God, Donna Kay. I wouldn't put batting between it, again, because this is, you can see here on that fold, this is a pretty thick fabric, so I don't think I would need batting in here. We'll just use, you know, I would just cut it out just like this. Here's my piece. This is like the floppy brim piece. I would just lay it on here, cut it out, and then I've got my fabric on both sides. So that's a heavy drapery fabric. Move you out of the way. Another fabric that I pulled is, oh, I got hung up. There we go. This one, and this is like a tapestry, but I love the little leopards on here. The other thing I loved about this one, and what I'm going to try to do, is these strips here, I think would make an awesome band. So I'm thinking the leopards for the brim, this for the band, leopards for the top, and then I've pulled this scrap of fabric for the inside. I've got some, oh, we'll talk about that in a minute. This piece of fabric that I pulled for the inside, and I think the only thing that I'm going to have to change here, since these are different widths, is like I was telling you on the bands, play with the different band sizes until the hat's as tall as you want it. So I probably will just use this as a band, and then maybe make one more band just so I get it a little bit taller, because I want this one to be fairly tall. I think that would be good. Yeah, so this, like I said, this is like a tapestry material. So you could use denim, you could use canvas. Another optional item that you might want to have on hand are some applique. You can see On this one, I put applique just literally all over it, kind of covered it. This is one I cut all these applique from different fabrics that I've collected over the years. So you obviously can use just fabric that you have on hand already. You can get big appliques if you're looking for something like the birds, the flowers, any of these that I've used here. I do have them available in my Etsy shop. This is just a few of the ones I offer. I have this one with all the birds. I have this one, oh, excuse me, this one with the butterflies. And you can see, this is the little butterfly that I used here. And then the Love Winds, that's literally one of my favorite ones. It is available on this huge panel, again, that I have available. It has the Love Winds, Be Kind. We've got Speak Peace, lots of birds, lots of bees, and we've got all the flowers. So, like I said, this one is called Jumbo Birds and Bees. I think Jumbo Birds and Bees or Jumbo Birds and Blooms. I think it's Jumbo Birds and Bees. Anyway, if you're looking for applique, you're in the market, you want to go find some of these, head to my Etsy shop. Otherwise, like I said, just grab fabrics that you have in your stash. So anyway, moving on, the rest of the supplies. So you're going to need your fabrics, whatever fabric you've chosen. You are also going to need wire, and I have suggested using 20 gauge wire, which is what this is. See if I can hold that up. I hope you can read that. Hildy and Joe. I think I got this at Hobby Lobby, but I'm not quite sure. But again, it's 20 gauge. I tried a thinner wire than 20 gauge on these hats, and it does work. You can see it works, but it just doesn't feel as sturdy to me as I would like. These I used this 20 gauge on, and you can see there definitely I have more I can get more bend or more whatever, more stability. So that's why I've chosen 20 gauge. I don't know that I would go any heavier than this because you don't want it so super stiff. So try to stick around 20 gauge wire. And you'll just need enough, I don't know, this came in an 8-yard pack. They're not very expensive, but you're just gonna need enough to go around the circumference of your brim. So obviously, if you're making a narrow brim hat, you need less than if you're making the big floppy brim hat. But get you some wire. You are also going to need some bias trim. This one I haven't pressed it out because I just finished over dyeing it. Let's see, where was I at? This one was a piece of quilt fabric, and the quilt had a binding on it. So I took the binding off the piece of quilt that I had, and I used that. Get off of there. So use your resources. If your quilt has some binding, pull that binding off. If you're using fabric, just make your own binding from your fabric. Or if you don't want the binding, again, we can talk about that. But if you're doing binding, you are going to need just a little bit, just enough to go around the hat. That's binding. No, not the last. The next to last thing is if you want to do the snap, like on this one, on the floppy brim. I don't know that you would need it on the narrow brim or even the wide brim. I mean, this is a wide brim. I guess you could if you wanted. I think it's most conducive to the floppy brim. But again, it's your hat. Do it how you want. Anyway, these are the snaps I use. They're just sew-on snaps. I think I got these on Amazon. So you could use them. I guess you could use a button even now that I'm thinking about it. The only thing is that you don't want to get anything too bulky in here, because keep in mind that when you reverse your hat, if you want to wear it on this side, you don't want something too big inside of here that's going to rub against your forehead, or you're going to end up with like a imprint or something on your forehead. So just keep that in mind when you're choosing what fastener you want to use. So then the last thing that you may or may not want to use is some sort of trim. And once again, you can use anything you'd like. Here I've put some large rickrack. You could use ribbon. I've got this really cool trim. I had originally thought about this on the leopard, but I don't care for it as much. So then I found these. These are just little lace pieces, and this is going to be like for a hat band, if you will. You know, just some trim to gussy it up. So I may use that there. I think on this one I have this trim, and I think it looks nice. Oh, I know what I was thinking. I was thinking on this side I would use this trim, and then on this reverse side I might put this little, I don't know if he's too dark or not. Maybe he's not. We'll see. Anyway, y'all know I can't decide on anything until the very end. Anyway, when I'm sitting at the sewing machine, I'll go, oh, that's the one. Struggle to make decisions. Anyway, so I think that covers everything as far as supplies go. So what I am going to be sewing today, I am going to use this cutter quilt, and I am going to sew size medium, and I am going to make it average height. And most of y'all know I transfer all my patterns onto freezer paper. If you want to know why, go check out my freezer paper tutorial. Anyway, I am going to make average height, so I'm going to use 2 of the B2 bands. Okay, and I am going to make it narrow brimmed. So I'm going to cut 3 of the narrow brims. And then again, like I said, I'm making size medium, so I'm going to need to cut me 1 crown. That's for this one. And I think these are the trims I'm going to use on that. Okay. For the leopard one, we're just going to lay you on top. How's that? There we go. For the leopard one, I am going to make it, I'm going to try to make it top hat size. Look, that's exactly the same width there. And if I do that, yep, I'm going to make it top hat size. So I'm going to cut 3 of the B2, size medium, and then on the brim, because I want to get all the leopard in there, I'm going to do the wide brim, and the leopards are going to go on the brim as well as one on the crown. So you can see how you can mix and match what brim width with what crown band height you want. The reason also that I'm going to make 2 is just to show you the differences between the top hat and the shorter hat. Some of the steps I'm not going to double up because there's no reason to, but I'm also going to show you the difference in putting the raw edge and then putting the bias. Okay, so what I want you to do now is go get your pieces cut out, and then let's meet back up here and we'll be ready to start sewing. I'll see you then. Okay, I wanted to show you a little bit about cutting out your pieces depending on whether or not you're using a pre-quilted piece or not putting any batting, or if you're going to quilt it yourself. So this hat I've already cut out, and you can see since it's pre-quilted, I simply cut my pieces out and I'm done. Easy enough. On this piece here with the leopards, and I decided I am making 3 hats because I am going to do the velvet one so that I can show you this one's not going to have batting, but that one is. So we have one pre-quilted, one with batting, one without batting, and then one with batting. So I can kind of show you the steps of each. I figured I would do a little filming on those steps. So what I do on this, like I said, I'm not using any batting. So I've cut out, and I'm not going to quilt this. Okay, so keep that in mind. I've cut out my main piece of fabric and I've laid it to the back side of my contrast fabric, and I'm just going to pin it down and cut it out. The reason you don't want to do this if you're going to quilt it is because when you quilt, it's actually going to shrink in some. So on the velvet one, I'm going to show you what we're going to do to avoid that happening. We're actually going to cut out bigger and then do our quilting and then cut our exact pattern pieces after we've quilted. So, but if you're not using batting and you're not going to be quilting and having layers that are going to shift and shrink in, you're just going to be using 2 pieces of fabric. Like again, these are heavy fabrics, so you still want to make sure you're going to have stability to your hat. Then simply lay them wrong sides together and cut them out. And then when I use this to sew, like when I sew these pieces, I am going to treat this, where's my trash can? Oh, there we go. I'm going to treat this as one piece of fabric, just like I would the quilt pieces. So, just cut. Right round this brim. There. So that's all you do. And then this is one piece of quilt. It's equivalent to this. Okay, and again, I'm just going to leave my pins in there, and when I'm sewing, and just treat this as one piece of fabric. Okay, I'm going to show you what we're going to do if you're going to quilt it. Okay, so this is the one that I'm going to put the quilt batting, and I am going to quilt. So when you do that, you're going to take your contrast fabric, or whichever you choose, one of your fabrics, and you're going to lay it face down. This is my right side, so I'm going to lay it face down with the wrong side facing me. Then I'm going to place my batting like so, and just make sure everything is smoothed out, that you don't have any wrinkles anywhere. And then you're going to place your top or your contrast, your other fabric, on top, right side up. Okay, and this is kind of a stretchy fabric. The velvet's a bit stretchy, so I'm going to make sure that I'm not like tugging on it so much. And that's another reason that we're going to do it this way, because when I quilt this, it's probably going to change size quite a bit. Okay, so you're going to take your pattern piece. For this hat, I'm going to use a narrow brim. So you're going to take your pattern piece and pin it to your quilt sandwich. Put a few, and you don't have to like completely pin it, but you just kind of want to get it where it's not gonna be coming apart on you. Put one more here in the middle. Okay. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut this out, making sure I'm cutting through all 3 layers, and I'm gonna cut it out probably about 1 inch around. I think that's what I said in the pattern, isn't it? Let's see. Leave excess on the outer edges of your pattern because it'll shrink. So I didn't say how much, I don't think, in the pattern, but you just want to leave, and it doesn't obviously have to be exact. Just leave you some fabric around. Like so. Okay, and then that's my quilt sandwich. I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. Actually, I'm going to take my pattern off. I can do that here. Take my pattern off, and then I'm going to repin everything so that I've got the 3 layers pinned together. Pin there. And then I'm just going to quilt this piece. And then once it's quilted to my liking, I'm going to bring it back to the cutting table. And then I will put the pattern piece on top and then cut it exact. Okay, so let me go quilt this. And let's just for giggles, let's look at it now. You can see we've got a pretty good ways around each of them. I'm curious to see when I quilt it how much it's going to change. So let me go quilt this piece. All right, I've got my piece quilted. I don't know if you can see it here. All I did was just sew kind of wonky wavy lines around it. Let me turn it over, maybe you can see on this side better where it's not shiny. Anyway, just some wonky wavy lines. The reason I chose to do that is in the instructions later on, you are going to have the option to sew circles around your hat brim, just the brim of it, and just kind of make them wonky and wavy if you choose. The reason I like to do that, let me see if you can see that in there. There's all these wonky wavy circles going around the whole entire brim. The reason I do that is, to me, it just gives it a bit more structure. Let me see if you can, yeah, here I did a whole bunch of them. Might could see it better on this side. But I like to do that. I think it just gives it a little more texture. So I did that here, and then in the end, I'm not going to have to do that. It's already done for me. Okay, so what we were looking at was quilting this piece together however you want. If you want to do the wavy lines, do the wavy lines. If you want to do fancy quilting, do fancy quilting. I like to do free motion, but I'm not a precision quilter. Anyway, so now once you're quilted, you're going to put your pattern piece back on top. And you can see I really, surprisingly, I didn't lose a lot of size. I had plenty of room. But you can see, maybe you can see on some of these edges how like this pulled in. So I have batting hanging out here. I have some batting hanging out there, right here. So some of it did shift. And if I had just cut my pieces exact and then quilted, I would have like wonky edges, and I don't want that. So now that I've quilted it, I'm going to lay my pattern piece on top and give it a little press so it stays put. Oh, my iron wasn't heated up. There we go. It's heating a little bit. Yeah. Put my pattern piece on top and cut it out to the exact size, which this one I've already done. So now I have a quilted, precisely cut piece. So if you're quilting yours, get all of your pieces quilted and cut out. All right, you should be quilted. If you're quilting, you should be cut out. And we are ready to start sewing. The first part we're going to start with is the band section. And we are using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And the first thing you need to decide is which side of your band pieces do you want to be the right side, which is going to be the finished side, and which do you want to be the wrong side, which is going to be the raw side. The finished edge is going to be called side A. Your instructions call that one side A, which is the red color. And then the raw edge side is side B, which is the blue color on your instructions. So this is going to be my side A. This I want to have a finished seam on, okay? And then this back side is going to be my side B. So with side A facing, so you're going to put right sides together, side A facing, you're going to run a 1/4 inch seam all the way down your band to connect the two bands together, okay? If you are working with 3 bands, you are going to repeat that process for all 3 bands, okay? And I don't have one here to show you because I haven't sewn any of them yet. But I am going to go and sew my band pieces together, and I will show you what that looks like. All right, I've got my band pieces all sewn together. Once you stitch the bands together, it's going to tell you to press the seam open and then run you a zigzag or a decorative stitch down this seam. And to me, that gives it a little bit cleaner look. Like you've still got the raw edges, but it's not going to fray all the way. Number one, it's going to be more sturdy because it's not going to fray all the way back to your seam line. And number two, to me, it just kind of gives it a little better look. And then on the back side, you've got a smooth seam. So this is the finished side, and then this is the raw edge side. Now this is for the average height, so it's got 2 bands. Some of you are going to have 3, like this one. This is going to be the top hat, so you can see I've got 3 sections. And once again, I have pressed my seam open, and you can see what happens when you do that. The fabric from your backside actually transfers to the front, because when you fold that seam back open, that's the fabric that's going to be showing. So to me, you've got, like here, there's a velvet on the back, and then when you turn it over, you've got these stripes of velvet. So if you've got real contrasting fabric, you're going to get this effect. Now these fabrics aren't that contrasting. I mean, this in here is still the fabric from the front, but these are real similar, so you really can't tell so much. But on something like this, you can. So anyway, that's that part. This is the other one I did where I had to adjust some of the widths because I wanted to use the already printed section of my fabric. So this is the raw side, and then this is my, oh, I'm showing you already. This is my finished side, and you can see I put a big patch on here. This is the time where if you're going to want to put any applique on your band, this is the easiest time to do it because your band is still flat. So you can stitch anything on here that you want to. Now, if you're going to want something coming up over the top or kind of angling from the band down to the brim, you're going to have to wait till later. But if you just want to put you some applique around here, onto the bands, now is the time to do that. And remember, you can put them on either side or both sides. If you want applique on both sides, put them on both sides. Maybe you want a bunch on this side and then one centered in the middle here. Now remember, your cut edges here, these are going to be the back seam. So if you fold this in half, this is your back seam here. This is the center front of your hat. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're placing your applique. Like if you want something to be right smack dab in the center front of your hat, that's going to be the center front right there. Okay, so let's go do some applique. And all right, we are back, and I have my applique done. I'll show you on this front. I've put, quite a few. I've got one in the center, quite a few scattered about. This is my raw edge side, so I want it to look kind of shabby. And then on the finished edge side, I went ahead and put a trim piece, and then I put one little angled patch there. So that's that one. You already saw this one earlier. I didn't do anything on this back side. I'm just going to leave it and probably put a band, but I'm going to decide that later. And then I finished this one. I put a big rose on the front, and I backed it with the velvet. And I'm trying to see if you can see. When I stitched the rose, I did like free motion quilting around it, and then I stitched, let me see if I turn it sideways if you can see the texture. Anyway, I stitched in through here to give it texture. And what that did is it had a really cool effect. And again, I don't know if you can see or not in the light, but it made a rose on the center front just out of texture. So I was really, really digging that. And I did just some visible mending there and up here, just because I liked the way that the stitching was looking on the velvet, like how it just gave it that texture. I thought that was really, really cool. Anyway, so appliques are done. Our next step is going to be finishing sewing our band together. So what you're going to do is fold your band in half, matching up your raw edges. And when you do this, make sure that the side that you want the finished edges on is inside, and then your raw edge side is as outside. And line them up here, and we're going to stitch right down this edge. If you've got just two bands, it's going to be the same way. You're going to have your finished edge inside, your raw edge outside. Line up your ends and stitch your seam here. Once you've stitched your seam, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to press your seams open and run a decorative stitch or zigzag. Okay? And once we get that done, we will be ready to move on to the brim. So go get your hat sewn together, and it's going to make it into a circle like so, and we're going to start looking like a hat. For those of you that might be new to sewing, I thought I would show you how to hold your fabric to do the top stitching on this seam, because it looks kind of difficult. What you want to do is turn your piece inside out. That way you can lay this flat edge down like so, and just, of course you're going to want this pressed. I didn't really press mine before I got started on this, but press your seam open. That makes it easier also if you do that first. And just line it up, and you're just going to hold all this back here and let it kind of go through as you get further down. And I hope you can see that. Maybe it's dark in here because it's late at night, but I'm hoping you can see this. So that's how you're gonna top stitch this edge here, or this seam that we just did. And then, like I said, I've just trimmed it down a little bit. Okay? All right, so we've got our bands all finished and ready to work with. If you've got 2 panels, this is what your band is going to look like. If you've got 3, obviously you're going to be taller, but it should be sewn together. So we're going to set the bands aside. And our next step is going to be the brim. And we're going to basically do the brim the same way that we did the bands. As far as we're going to sew the 3 brim pieces together. You're going to want like this is my right side. This is my my side A. Right? Yeah, this is my side A, which is my side that's going to be finished. So I'm going to put those together, and then this is my raw edge. So I'm going to make sure that my finished edge side is inside, my raw edge side is outside. I'm going to sew these 2 together, okay? And then I'm going to add another one. Sew these 2 together, open this up, and then what I'm going to do, once I've got these 2 seams sewn, I'm just going to fold the whole thing in half, and then I'm going to sew this seam together, okay? So then you'll have all 3 seams stitched. We're going to do these seams the same way. As far as once you've sewn the seam, you want to go ahead and open it up. Let's see if I can do this. There we go. Go ahead and press your seam out, and then run you that decorative or zigzag stitch. Okay, so go get your bands put together. All right, you should have your bands, not your bands, your brims put together. They should look something like this. And on the back side, I've got my seams, and I've got them edge stitched down. And you can see the difference here really a lot between this is the wide brim. Oh no, this is the narrow brim. This is the narrow brim. And then this is the floppy brim. So both of these are the narrow brim. Yeah, so you can see there's like a huge difference. And then the wide brim is going to fall in between. Anyway, so these are all done. And the next step is any applique that you're going to put on your brim, do it now. I don't think I'm putting any on this one. I'm pretty sure I'm not, because I just like the stitching of it. And this one, I'm not going to either, obviously, because I've got all the jaguars there, and then I've got my print here. So I think I'm just going to leave this one as is. All that buzz. This one I am going to put some applique on. And then the other thing you're going to want to do while you're in the applique mood is go ahead and applique your crown piece. If you're putting any applique. These two I'm probably not. This one I probably am. So applique your brims, applique your crowns, and then we are going to get these sewn together into a completed hat. All right, you should now have your brims finished, your applique on your brim, any applique you wanted to add to your crown, you should have that done. And we're ready to start assembling. So you're going to start with your band, and you want your raw edge outside, okay? Move this over so I can center you up a bit here. So I just set mine down like that. Then you're going to take your crown and figure out which way you want your crown to be. You can turn it any way you want to. I'm going to kind of have my stripes running forward and backwards. So I am going to fold this in half so I can find my center front again. Put me a little pin there. This is just going to help us to line everything up. Put me a little pin at the center front. If you want to put one on the sides as well, you can simply match that pin with your center back. That's going to give you this side. Stick a little pin in there, and then this side, and I'll stick a little pin in here. And now I probably should make that pin going down, or I'm going to end up hurting myself. There we go. Okay, and so like I said, on my crown I've got these stripes, and I'm going to want them to run this way. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to fold this in half kind of along my stripe line, so I keep my stripes going the right direction. Fold it in half. I am going to put a little pin here as the center back. And I can see that's right inside that green line, so I'm just going to make my other one right here. And that's kind of where I had it folded, but that'll keep things running in line. And then I'm going to fold these over. Match up my pins there. So that's going to be one side right there. Fold it back, match those, match this, and then this is going to be my other side. So I'm going to drop a little pin right there. So now, oh, my pin doesn't want to go through. Come on, little pin. There we go. Okay. Now we can lay this on top, and we are just going to match our seams. So center back, matching to center back, and put my pin through all of it like so. And then our center fronts, don't need both pins, take that out, pin this one like so. And then our sides, we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to line the two side pins, take one out, repin like so. And our final side over here, line them up, take one pin out, and repin like so. And now you can see you should pretty well line up the rest of the way around the crown, okay, like that. If you want to add more pins, you can. I'm probably not going to, but if you want to, you can. So let's take this to the machine, and I'm going to show you how I position everything to sew this. Alright, so I'm going to attempt to show you how I position everything. And really and truly, it's not as difficult as it seems, but I'm just going to slide it under, and I'm sewing from, this is the crown of the hat, and this is the band of the hat underneath. So I've got my edges lined up, and I am going to start here at the back, at the center back seam, and just stitch my little 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. Okay, so that's it. And it's going to be hard to show you guys because it's so zoomed in. I got the camera up close, but you can see I've sewn. There's the train. Anyway, I've sewn all. I think he's done, I hope. Anyway, I've sewn all the way around the crown. So our crown is now attached to our brim. Now I do like to go ahead and open this seam up and run a stitch along it also, and that's a little bit trickier to do. If you want to give it a try, I'll show you how I hold everything to do that. The first thing I'm going to do is turn this wrong side out. So to take that away from the camera for a second. And then, so now it's like I'm sewing down, oh, there I go bumping you. Sewing down in a bucket almost, but I'm going to slide this edge up under my foot until I can get, and this is so hard for me to see you guys because I can't see around the camera actually. But I'm gonna hold this seam open. I can't see. There we go. There we go. Okay, and so I know this is probably hard for you to see what's going on as well, but this is the seam we just sewed around the crown. This is our band on this side. So I'm going to go around it just holding this open as I go and stitching either a zigzag or like a quilting stitch, which is what I'm going to use here. Here's where we're at now, and hopefully you can see it better in this light. So we've got our crown stitched onto our band, and I've top stitched my seams open. Okay, and I've done that to all 3 of them. So here's my velvet one. Of course you probably can't see that too well. I'll show you the wrong side. And here you'll see it more clearly because of this. This one, when I'm done with this one, I'm gonna dunk it in a dye bath because this cotton, I don't really like the white that's showing through. I like the fluff, but I don't like the white with these colors. So I'm gonna give it a quick dunk when I'm done with this to dye that stuffing, so it'll give it a little better look, I think. So you always have that option. And then here is this one, and we've got our little leopardy guy right there. And again, I've got a lot of loose threads on this one, but I'll come back and trim all that off towards the end. But you can see how all of this just gives more detail. These folding these seams open and top stitching them just gives you that much more kind of texture to your hat. Okay, so that section is done. Now we are ready to move on to putting the brim onto our band. So to start with, we are going to have it right side. So you want your finished edge side facing out. Why do I have strings everywhere now? Okay, I'm not gonna go crazy about it right now. Oh, I didn't trim them from earlier. Okay. That y'all probably know this by now. I always freak out when I see strings. I can't stand them hanging out looking at me. I'm like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. It drives me nuts. Okay. Wait, there's another one. All right, I feel better. Sorry. Anyway, just one of my oddities. All right, so I have my my bands and my crown turned right side out. This is the finished side, right side out. And then I'm gonna take my brim, and I want my brim to be wrong side up. So this is my raw edge side, and I want it facing up, okay? I've also placed the back seam right here at the back of the hat. And then I'm gonna look at my brim and decide, okay, I've already decided on this one, like this is my center back one. I mean, you could turn this brim any way you chose. It doesn't make a difference. But you're gonna have one center back seam on the brim, and then you're gonna have two angled, like towards the front, side front seams. So always put the one, line it up with your center back seam, okay? And now we're just gonna pin this in place. You move over. And again, lining up the back seam of the brim with the back seam of the hat. And you'll notice when you do this now, I think this is my bent pin. Yeah, it is. Oh well. When you do this now, you're going to notice that your raw edge side and your raw edge side, when you sew this, you know, so basically you've got right sides, finished sides together. Okay. Now, what I like to do at this point is kind of what we did with the crown. I am just going to fold this in half. I'm going to turn it sideways for a second. So if this is my center back, this is my center front. I'm going to place a pin there just temporarily. And I'm going to do the same thing on my crown. And this is going to make sure that I get everything lined up. So here we have our center back. Here we have our seams that are going to meet up. And that's going to make this be our center front. Okay, so I'm just gonna stick me a little pin there, and then I'm gonna match these two right there like so. Turn it around so I can pin it. No, I want to pin from this side. Now, on the brim, it's gonna take a little more easing to get things where you want them than it did on the crown. Because the brim, when the brim comes off the band, it's got a little bit of flare to it. So you're going to notice this brim is a bit bigger than your band section. But again, you're just going to kind of ease everything in as you go along. Just kind of pin it and ease it. You see I've got these little bits. You're just going to kind of ease that in as you go around. Okay, so I'm going to finish pinning this. Here, and all you're doing is just lining up this top raw edge as you go. I guess I should have like jokes or something to tell in the downtime when I'm just pinning, and I don't know any good jokes. Y'all tell me some good jokes. I love a good joke. So I'm just gonna ease that in there. So now the only joke I know is, how do you make a skunk not smell? You hold his nose. Ha ha ha. Anyway, okay. Now we have our, y'all are like, is that over with? Now we have our crown pinned on to our band, and we are ready to take this to the machine and get it sewn on. Okay? And to sew it, I'm just gonna show you. Okay, I think I am positioned there where you can see. So I have my brim pinned on, and I'm going to start here. This is the center back of my band. Underneath is the center back of my brim. And again, I'm just going to be sewing with the 1/4 inch seam allowance. If I change my machine to the right setting, there we go. And we're just going to sew, and you can see here, this is a good way to show you how we're going to ease this in. You see how this is longer than this, but that's where you've got to just kind of ease things together, because again, you want that you're going around a curve for one thing, but also this brim is going to have a flare. It's going to flare out a little bit, okay? So don't freak out that these aren't exactly, you can see how easily I can bring that back together. And that's also the reason it's important to, if you have the band on top and the brim underneath, the brim is the bigger piece, okay? And so if you have the band on top, as you're going, you can just kind of push it down into place, and it's going to seat itself inside of that brim. I hope that made sense. All right, here we go. Okay, so that part's done, and you can see we've got we've got that seam sewn down. So just like every other seam that we've done, oh, I just moved y'all. My bad. Okay, are you back? There we go. I hope that's good. Sorry. Okay. Just like every other seam that we've done thus far, we're just going to open this seam up. This one's going to be a little bit easier than the crown because we've got this brim out here, so we have a little more room to work with. Just open, and if you want to take this to the iron and iron this flat first, that's obviously going to be a help to you. Since I'm sitting here, I don't want to like untangle myself from this camera right now because I'm kind of in a precarious situation. So I'm just going to keep on going. And I'm just going to flatten this with my fingers, just kind of finger press it as I go around. And again, zigzag or decorative stitch to tack this down, this seam open. So we now have our brim sewn on, and we have finished top stitched, whatever you want to call it, stitched over our seam allowances, opened them up, stitched it down. So we've got those on, and we are looking like a hat. So now we're going to do the wire, and I'm going to go through on these two, the leopard and the velvet, and I'm going to put the bias binding like it's in the instructions. On this hat, I'm going to show you the raw edge, so we're going to save that for just a bit. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is on your finished side, you want to have it out, and you're going to take your bias strips, and with the wrong side of your bias strip facing and starting at your no, that's not my center. I always start at the center back seam. So this is my center back seam. You're going to take your bias binding, and with the wrong side facing, we are going to lay it matching up the raw edge here, and we are just going to stitch it all the way around. Okay, so we're going to stitch right along here to put our bias on. And on this one, I'm going to do it the same way. This is a wide brim, but it's exactly the same way. So I'm going to use this as the right side and this is the wrong side. So I want the wrong side facing, and I'm just going to lay this right along this rim all the way around and stitch it down. Now you're going to be stitching pretty close. You want like a 1/4 inch again, seam allowance. Okay, and so just stitch that down and then we'll get our wire out. When I do this binding, here is, oh, I just dropped it. Here's my center back seam where I'm going to be starting. So what I do is, dadgum, this velvet's hard to hold on to. There we go. I am going to extend this past the seam where I'm wanting my center back seam to be, if that makes sense. So I'm going to extend it past that, and I'm not going to start sewing right up on that seam. I'm going to start sewing back here a bit, and I'll show you why here in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to place that on there and set it up here so I get right at about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. There we go. Set my stitch length, and I'm just going to stitch this down around the hat, and then I'm going to stop. I'll show you when I get to the back around to where we started. Okay, here we go. Okay, so you can see here, God, I hope this is in the right place. Anyway, you can see here, this is my center back seam, and I've come up to about there, and this is where I started sewing here. So I'm going to stop right there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold my hat on that center back seam. I'm going to lay this way. This is floppy material. This is probably not the best to show you with. And then I'm going to bring this up here. Okay, so basically what I'm doing is I'm going to take this out for a minute. Ugh, try to show you. I'm folding my hat in half, my brim, and kind of measuring. Okay, so this is the back strip, this is my hat folded in, this is the top bias strip. So what I'm doing is just visually measuring where the seam of the bias strip needs to be. Like it needs to be right there, right where the end of my thumb is. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, oh gosh, sorry, pull this back out of the way, and then I know I can put me a little pin right there where my thumb is. Sorry, this is all dangling down, you guys. This is really awkward. Anyway, I'm going to put my little pin right there. And then I'm going to sew my 2 bias strips together. But again, I'm going to make sure that this part of the hat is back out of the way because I don't want to stitch it yet. All I want to be sewing right now are the 2 ends of the bias together so that the bias all the way around is the exact length that I want it to be. So, and I'm just trying to straighten everything out here. There we go. And this pin, I know it's at an angle, but where I went in is where I want it sewn. So I am going to stitch right across there. And sorry if that's shaking. My foot is hitting the edge of the tripod underneath. Grab my scissors. And then I could go ahead and snip the ends off of that. And then you can see now that my bias is sewn together and I'm the exact length that I need to be, and my seam line here is going to match up with my seam line at the back. Okay, I hope that made sense. This is not the best situation to try to show you that little trick on, but that's how I do my bias. Like on a neckline or anything like that, that's how I get it to match up exactly. Anyway, let's move on. I'm going to finish this little part. Okay, so I've got the brim of my hat, and again, I'm starting at the back center seam. I've got my wire with the little hook on the ends, and I'm going to place it right about that center seam. It doesn't have to be exact there. It's not going to matter a whole lot. That's just where your wires are going to connect together when we come around the other side. And so I'm going to start down from that end just a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I am going to zigzag. Make sure that your zigzag is set wide enough to cover the wire. I mean, you should be positioned pretty well. I have a center little slash here on my presser foot that I kind of watch, and that's where I let the wire go through there. And then that way my zigzag is going to go over this wire. But again, we're in this little selvage, this little seam. What do you call that? Anyway. Words come back to me. Anyway, let's sew. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. You can see this is where we started. Here is my other little hook. So what I'm going to do is, let me get my craft scissors. Here they are. I am going to, and I'm going to try to do this up here with the camera. Clip my wire. And then what I want to do is I want to feed this end that I just cut through this loop. So I'm going to bend the loop back. Feed that through there. I hope you could see that. And then what that's going to do, you know what, I'm going to, let me move this out from the machine some. Anyway, so you can see I've got the wire coming through. I've looped it up through that. And then I'm just going to bend it back down that way. So you've got two loops grabbing onto each other. And that's going to help keep that wire in place. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully zigzag up here. I'm not going to zigzag over this portion where these loops are because that is just too much and I don't want to take a risk of hitting my needle on these. But if you get these ends, you know, on here we started about right here. So if I get up on this end, I should be pretty good there. So I'm going to go just a little bit over that. Okay, I'm going to leave it just like that. Actually, I'm going to come back and sew this. I don't know if you can see this right here. See how there's like little threads up over where those two wires are looped together? This one, I've got this wire, this end hanging out right there. You can see. So let me press it back down. I am going to zigzag just a little bit over where those two wires meet to kind of hold that closed. Make sure that my zigzag is wide enough, and I'm not. Let me go a little bit wider. There we go. There we go. Okay. That should be good. Yeah, now I've got that end kind of sealed down also. Okay. So your wires should be in place all the way around your brim. And now all we're going to do is we're going to fold this over, okay, all the way around and up under the bottom side. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over. Like so. And remember, this now is our raw edge side, okay? So what I know underneath is I've got wire here, I've got a seam allowance here, okay? This is really stretchy, so I'm going to try not to tug on it too much. But when I fold this over, I know that seam, I can feel it with my hand, and I can feel where that seam is. So I'm going to be stitching. Here comes the train. Obviously it's late at night. They always come through late at night, so I apologize. I'm going to be stitching right along here because this is where our wire is, and I don't... He's going to go one more time. Or not. Nope, there he goes. Have you ever noticed, I don't know if you live where there's trains or not, but each conductor has their own specific honk that they make? Anyway, it's crazy. Okay, so back to what I was saying. We've got the wire in here, so we don't want to be sewing over that blindly. We'll break our needles. So we're gonna stay over to this edge, and you'll be able to feel that, you know. And we want it to be outside of this initial stitching line, okay? And so we should have plenty of room here on our bias to get it sewn right around here. Alrighty. And if you're leaving this a raw edge, make sure you use a zigzag stitch or a quilting stitch. Now you should have enough fabric here also if you wanted to tuck this under and get a finished edge along here. You should be able to do that, and then you're going to have a finished edge on both sides. That's up to you. I'm going to leave it raw since the rest of this side is the raw edge. Okay, here we go. And that is your wire brim. Okay, so you see now I can bend my hat however I would like. And the wire is secure in there. It's not going to pop out. And then on this side that we just sewed on, I've got a lot of edge here, so I'm going to probably trim that back some. And that's how you do the bias. So let's go back over, and I'll show you how to do the one if you want to leave the raw edge. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to do this if you are wanting to leave the raw edge exposed. Okay, so I'm going to do that on this one. And it's basically the same procedure, only you can notice we haven't put any bias binding down first. So I've just got the raw edge of my hat, and you can do this on either side, either your finished side or your raw edge side. I'm going to go ahead and put mine on my raw edge side that's got all my other raw edges. And so you're going to start with your wire the same exact way we did before. Make a little loop, little hook at the end. And I am going to start at the center back of my hat. And I am going to lay the wire down close to the edge, like so. Probably within a 1/4 inch. It's not going to matter as much here because we're not putting a covering over this like the bias binding or bias tape. We're not going to do that, but you do want to be kind of close to your edge. So, and again, don't start right here. You don't want your zigzag to hit this loop. So just start right behind that loop. Set my zigzag to a wide stitch. There we go. There we go. And I just always like double check and make sure that my needle isn't going to hit, and it doesn't. So I am going to stitch, zigzag stitch back and forth across this wire all the way around. Okay, and when I get close to my starting point, I am going to take my craft scissors or wire cutters, whichever you want to use, and I'm going to clip this where I have enough room to loop this through that loop and fold it back over itself. So let's cut that right there. Put that through the hole like so. Straighten everything back out. Kind of left that a little bit too long. See how long my wire is now that I've looped it through, so I'm going to trim some more off. Cut it about right there. Fold that back in as tight as I can. You could even take some like pliers or wire crimpers and crimp these down. With these wires being so thin though, you don't want to put too much pressure on them because you can break these wires fairly easily. So now I'm going to finish stitching up until I kind of stitch over where those two ends meet. Okay, so now that we have our wire zigzag down and it's not going to go anywhere, we are going to take little strips of fabric. Now, mine are cut on the bias. It really isn't going to matter so much. You could tear just straight strips of fabric. The width of them doesn't particularly matter either. I try to stay close to an inch, but this is where you can use any scrap of fabric, anything you want, because basically what we're going to do is we're going to twist this fabric and lay it down on top as we go, and that's going to cover this wire. Now, you want to make sure, again, go slowly. You don't want your needle hitting this wire. So make sure you're still set at a wide zigzag, and that when you're lining this this strip of fabric up, that you're going directly over that wire down the middle, so that again you don't accidentally hit that wire with your needle. So you can see here, I'm starting back here. You can see I've already got this little twist here, and I know that that twist is laying right over the top of my wire. So when my zigzag comes through, it's gonna not hit the wire. All right, here we go. Okay, now I'm at the end of my little strip there, so I'm just gonna grab me another strip and continue on around. And I dropped my strip, hang on. No, I can't reach it because I got too many tripods around me. We'll just grab this one. And I always start, like I cut my strips in an angle because I don't want too much bulk at that starting edge. So if this one's an angle and that one's an angle, they're gonna kind of meet up nicer where I don't have like a whole lot of fabric just bulked up where the two meet, but yet I'm covered. Okay. So let's see. And again, like I said, it's not going to matter which way you twist it. Just kind of play with your fabric and see how you like it, you know, to look. Now I'm coming back around to my beginning edge, so I'm going to be super careful going over this part. We've got to cover this join, but again, we do not want our needle to hit those wires and break our needle. So I'm going to kind of flatten out my fabric here so I make sure I get good coverage over that. And then when I get right here, I'm going to go ahead and set my zigzag to the absolute widest zigzag I have on my machine, so that I know that I'm not going to hit that, and we're going to go really slow. I think I'm past it now. So I'm just going to finish. I happen to be at the end here. If I wasn't at the end, I would just go ahead and cut this at a little angle. But since I am at the end, I'm just going to fold this down and just stitch onto here. I'm going to narrow my stitch back down since I'm past that wide part. And tie my knot. Oh, come on. There we go. And that is it. So oh, I didn't cut. Come on. I guess I need to take my machine in. It is not, my little cutter isn't, oh, now I'm hitting the lights. isn't wanting to cut that thread at the end. I got something. There we go. Oh, I was at the end of my bobbin. Ha! Look, we ended right at the end. I love when that happens. So you can see this edge here is all covered, and it's got some little flappy parts that kind of make it look shabby. If you wash this, and of course you can wash your hats, I wouldn't recommend a heavy agitation if you have an agitator, because that's going to wrinkle your wires up. But if you put it like on delicate, that probably would be okay. I've washed them before on delicate and it's been just fine. If you have a front loader that doesn't have the agitator, you're probably okay also. But that's just going to make all these little edges are going to start fraying up, and that's going to give it a much better look also. You can see I can just run my nail along that and just kind of fray these up a bit. Sometimes what I do too, if I don't want it to go through the washing machine, I usually do just because I want these to fray up as well. But that's up to you. You could always just kind of like mush them up with your hands. You can spray them with a little bit of water and like hand wash it and throw it in the dryer and let it kind of fluff itself back out. That's up to you. Let me show you the underside here though. So on our clean side, if you will, you've got the zigzag going all the way around where the wire is. But then this edge, again, this is an edge that I'm going to want to kind of fray up. So that will give us the raw edge look. I suppose if you wanted to, if you didn't like this zigzag here and you did want a little decoration there as well, you could do the same thing with your fabric on this side as well and have that kind of rolled look on both sides. That's up to you. All right, so that is both methods of attaching the wire. You could stop here and your hat would be done. There is one more step that I like to take, and that is to sew continuous spirals around the brim. Now remember on the velvet hat, let me bring it over, where I told you like when I quilted these sections that I did these kind of wavy lines. Well, this is where that's going to come into play, because what I'm going to do now is on this brim, it's quilted already, but I'm going to run wavy lines. All that's going to do is just add a little more structure to this brim. I like that, and I also like the look that it gives. It's not real prominent, but you'll see it. So I am just going to start here at the center back, and with a straight stitch, kind of a long stitch, because it doesn't need to be a real short stitch. And I am going to spiral around and around and around and around and around and around and around until I get up to here. And I'm not going to go straight. I'm kind of going to make wavy, wonky lines. When I come to any patches like this, I'm just going to go right over the top of them. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm going to call that done. And I don't know if you can see, obviously over the patches you can see where I've gone. Now on my back side where I don't have patches, I love the texture that this gives, and I hope you can see it. Get off of there. Just the little ridges. And again, that just adds, ooh, got me some strings. That just adds a little more texture and a little more structure. So we are done. Woohoo!